The silver bubbled and hissed as it melted over the open flame. Governor Inalchuq, once proud ruler of Otrar, now knelt before the most powerful man on earth, his arms bound behind his back. "You coveted our treasure," Genghis Khan said coldly. "Now you shall have it." As the molten metal was poured into Inalchuq's eyes and ears, his screams echoed across the conquered city, a brutal end for the man who had made the fatal mistake of insulting the great Khan. But this execution was merely the opening act in a campaign of vengeance so devastating that entire civilizations would be erased from history. Welcome to the infamous past, where we uncover history's darkest moments. Today, we examine the terrifying fate that awaited anyone who dared to cross Genghis Khan, and how one man's fatal decision triggered a wave of destruction that would claim millions of lives and forever alter the course of Asian history. The story of Governor Inalchuq and the molten silver execution reveals not just the Khan's capacity for brutality, but his mastery of psychological warfare, a strategy that transformed fear itself into his most powerful weapon of conquest. Before we witness Inalchuq's gruesome end, we must understand the world in which this fatal insult occurred. By 1218, Genghis Khan had accomplished what many thought impossible. Born Temujin around 1162 near Lake Baikal, he had risen from obscurity to unite the perpetually warring Mongol tribes under his banner. The Mongol Empire he created was unlike anything the world had seen before. His military innovations, the composite bow that could pierce armor at 200 yards, the lightning-fast cavalry tactics, the sophisticated communication network, had already conquered northern China and territories stretching to the Caspian Sea. Yet, despite his fearsome reputation, Genghis Khan was not always bent on conquest. He valued trade and diplomatic relations, understanding that commerce could bring wealth without the costs of war. The Silk Road, that ancient network connecting East and West, was vital to his vision of Mongol prosperity. To the southwest of Mongol territory lay the wealthy Khwarezmian Empire, spanning modern-day Iran, Afghanistan, and parts of Central Asia. Ruled by Shah Muhammad II, this Muslim empire controlled key sections of the Silk Road and represented a potential trading partner of immense value. In 1218, seeking to establish peaceful relations, Genghis Khan dispatched a caravan of merchants to the frontier city of Otrar, bearing valuable goods and a letter of friendship addressed to the Shah. The caravan's fate would rest in the hands of Otrar's governor, Inalchuq, the Shah's maternal uncle. The fatal insult. Inalchuq, known by his title, Ger Khan, the arrogant Khan, viewed the approaching Mongol caravan with suspicion. According to historical accounts, he accused the merchants of being spies, though many historians believe he simply coveted their valuable goods. Whatever his reasoning, Inalchuq made a decision that would seal the fate of millions. He ordered the immediate execution of all 450 Mongol merchants. Their goods were seized and their heads displayed on the city walls, a clear message of defiance to the great Khan. When news reached Genghis Khan, he responded not with immediate rage, but with calculated diplomacy. He sent 3 ambassadors to Shah Muhammad, demanding the surrender of Inalchuq and compensation for the massacre. The Shah's response was catastrophic. He had one ambassador beheaded and sent the other 2 back with their beards shaved off, a profound insult in Mongol culture, where the beard was considered sacred. The second insult transformed what might have been a limited punitive expedition into a campaign of total annihilation. As historian Frank E. Smith notes, Genghis Khan reportedly prayed alone on a mountain for 3 days, seeking divine sanction for what he was about to unleash. What kind of vengeance would satisfy the ruler of the world's most powerful empire? The psychological warfare of Genghis Khan. The Mongol army that marched towards Khwarezm in 1219 numbered approximately 200,000 warriors, a massive force, but still outnumbered by the Shah's armies. Yet Genghis Khan possessed weapons far more powerful than bows and swords, psychological warfare, and strategic terror. It was recorded that before a single arrow was fired, Genghis Khan deployed an extensive network of spies and informants throughout the Khwarezmian Empire. These agents spread rumors about the size of the approaching Mongol army, claiming it numbered in the millions. They whispered tales of Mongol atrocities in vivid detail, describing the fate that awaited those who resisted. The Khan's approach to conquest followed a deliberate pattern. First came an offer of surrender with relatively lenient terms. Those who submitted immediately would be spared, though required to pay tribute and accept Mongol rule. Those who resisted would face complete annihilation. This conflicted choice created division within targeted cities, with some arguing for surrender while others insisted on fighting. The psychological pressure was immense, and the Khan ensured that news of what happened to resistant cities spread quickly. The Mongols understood that terror could be weaponized, that fear itself could break enemies before a single arrow was fired. It wasn't just brutality, it was calculated psychological warfare designed to minimize Mongol casualties while maximizing the impact of their conquests. The fate of Inalchuq and Otrar. In February of 1219, the Mongol army reached Otrar, the city where the fatal insult had occurred. The siege lasted 5 months, with Inalchuq and his garrison fighting desperately from within the city walls. When the city finally fell, Genghis Khan ordered a punishment specifically designed for Inalchuq, one that would serve as both personal revenge and a warning to others. Inalchuq was captured alive and brought before Genghis Khan. The great Khan ordered molten silver be poured into his eyes and ears, a punishment with symbolic significance. "You desired our gold and silver," the Khan reportedly said. "Now you shall have it." This execution method, known as the Silver Death, was rarely used by the Mongols, making its application to Inalchuq particularly significant. It represented not just punishment, but a message about the consequences of greed and treachery. But Inalchuq's death was just the beginning. There are historical accounts mentioning the entire population of Otrar was divided into categories. Skilled artisans were identified and sent back to Mongolia as slaves. The remaining population, men, women, and children, were executed. The city was methodically destroyed, with irrigation systems dismantled to ensure it could never be rebuilt. What followed was one of history's most devastating military campaigns, a systematic dismantling of an entire civilization. The Campaign of Annihilation. The Mongols moved from city to city with terrifying efficiency. At Bukhara, one of the greatest centers of Islamic learning, Genghis Khan rode his horse into the Grand Mosque and declared himself the punishment of God. The city's defenders were executed, its treasures looted, and its libraries containing priceless manuscripts burned to ash. Scholars were forced to serve as human shields for the next assault. How does an empire respond when its cultural and intellectual centers are systematically destroyed? At Samarkand, The Mongols employed a tactic that would become their signature, using captured civilians as human shields. Thousands of prisoners were forced to march ahead of the Mongol army, absorbing arrow fire from their own countrymen. When the city fell, 30,000 craftsmen were enslaved and sent to Mongolia, while the remaining population was massacred. But the most horrific fate awaited the city of Merv, then one of the largest cities in the world. After its surrender, the Mongols ordered the entire population to exit the city and lie down on the plain outside. What happened next was recorded by contemporary historians. The Mongols divided the population among their soldiers, with each warrior assigned to execute hundreds of people. Estimates of the dead at Merv range from 700,000 to 1.3 million people. In a scene ripped from the darkest corners of human imagination, the true horror of Merv's annihilation unfolded when Mongol soldiers were strictly ordered to cut off an ear from each victim to count the dead, filling numerous large sacks with human ears, a bureaucratic approach to mass murder that foreshadowed the systematic atrocities of the 20th century. The destruction of Merv was so complete that the city, once a jewel of Islamic civilization, would never recover. Its irrigation systems were destroyed, its walls demolished, and its population virtually exterminated. Where 1 million people once lived, only a handful of ruins remained. Historical impact and legacy. The Shah, whose response to Genghis Khan had triggered this catastrophe, fled rather than face the Mongol army. According to historian Frank E. Smith, he died alone on a small island in the Caspian Sea as a broken man, watching his empire crumble from afar. By 1223, the Khwarezmian Empire had ceased to exist. Its cities were abandoned ruins, its population decimated, its cultural heritage largely erased. According to historical estimates, between 10 and 15 million people, nearly 3/4 of the region's population, perished during the Mongol invasion. The campaign against Khwarezm established Genghis Khan's reputation for both brutality and psychological warfare. Future conquests would follow the same pattern: offer surrender terms, utterly destroy those who refused, and use terror as a weapon to break enemy morale. This approach proved devastatingly effective. Cities thousands of miles away would surrender to Mongol forces without resistance, having heard the fate of those who defied the Great Khan. The psychological impact of Genghis Khan's revenge campaign transformed warfare itself. His strategic use of terror, not as a byproduct of war, but as a deliberate tactic, influenced military thinking for centuries to come. Some historians have also noted that the environmental impact of such sheer brutality in warfare was equally profound. Regions that had been agricultural centers for millennia were transformed into grasslands suitable only for the Mongols' horses. Sophisticated irrigation systems built over centuries were destroyed, never to be rebuilt. The fate. The fate of Inalchuq, the last man who dared insult Genghis Khan, remains a haunting symbol of how a single slight unleashed a storm of vengeance that would scar Central Asia forever. Perhaps the most terrifying aspect of this history is not the brutality itself, but how calculated it was. Genghis Khan's revenge wasn't blind rage. It was psychological warfare elevated to an art form, designed not just to punish his enemies, but to break the will of all who might oppose him in the future. What would our world look like today if that caravan of merchants had been welcomed at Otrar instead of massacred? How many millions might have lived? How many cultural treasures might have survived? And what does it tell us about human nature that one man's insult could unleash such devastating consequences? This is the infamous past, where we uncover history's darkest moments. If you found this exploration of Genghis Khan's revenge fascinating, don't forget to like and subscribe for more glimpses into history's shadows.